Over the last 3 years, I've been delving into mysteries and conspiracies on a daily basis. It's been an amazing journey, and we have featured possibly a few hundred mysteries since this channel started. But the whole point of a mystery and conspiracy is to get to the bottom of it and debunk or solve the case. So, from the Solway Spaceman, which is an incredibly common, mysterious image that always makes an appearance in videos, to the true identity of Lori Ruff, here are 5 common mysteries and conspiracies that we can finally put to bed. Sit back and enjoy. The Solway Spaceman. Back in the late 1950s, early 60s, the world was fired up by the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union. And when in 1962, NASA released a footage showing astronauts in their official space gear, the image of the spaceman was born. This set the way for a famous photo taken in 1964. Jim Templeton, a fireman from Carlisle in the UK, took a photograph of his daughter in her new dress. After getting the photos developed, one of the shots showed what appeared to be a spaceman lurking in the background. Alarmed by what he saw, Mr. Templeton took it to the police, who declared there was nothing out of the ordinary. Kodak also got involved and even offered a reward to anyone who could prove the photo was fake, which was never claimed. The image was released to the local press and eventually made headlines around the world, becoming the famous Solway Spaceman. Shortly after, Mr. Templeton revealed that he had had a visit from the mysterious Men in Black, who asked him to take him to the spot overlooking the Solway Firth, where the image had been captured. The two men referred to each other as number 9 and number 11. However, in recent years, and with advanced technology, the mystery of the Solway Spaceman is believed to have been solved. On that day in May 1964, Jim Templeton and his daughter were not the only ones present. His wife Anne was also there, and in the shot before the one featuring the spaceman, you can see her playing on the floor beside her daughter. She's wearing a pale blue sleeveless dress. Templeton took 3 photos of his daughter in quick succession using a Kodak camera, and it was the middle one that showed the supposed spaceman. It's now concluded that the spaceman illusion was actually created by Anne Templeton, who inadvertently walked into the spot, unseen by her husband through the viewfinder of his Pentacon F SLR camera that only gave him a 70% view. This is backed up by the other photo taken that day, that shows his wife again caught in Templeton's blind spot. The overexposed image in the Solway Spaceman photo makes Anne's dress appear white, and looking at the position of her arms, appears to be the back of her walking out of shot. So although Mr. Templeton was telling the truth about what happened that day, as he wouldn't have seen his wife through the viewfinder, and the photograph wasn't manipulated, faked, or set up in any way, there is a much simpler explanation. However, as for the Men in Black that visited Templeton, unless he was lying about that, although we've solved one mystery, we've opened the door to another. The Sailing Stones in Death Valley. For many years, the sailing stones in Death Valley, California, puzzled scientists. The heavy stones appeared to move over the dry lake bed known as Racetrack Playa, often leaving a trail behind them in the mud. Given the fact that some weighed up to 700 pounds, the movement gave rise to a number of theories, including magnetic fields, aliens, wind, and even pranksters. The mystery was further deepened as no one had ever witnessed them moving. The rocks regularly moved as far as 250 meters, seemingly on their own, often creating exquisite curves or dead straight lines. It wasn't until 2006 that NASA scientist Ralph Lorenz finally solved the mystery. Lorenz was studying weather conditions on other planets and was especially keen on comparing the meteorological conditions of Death Valley to those near Ontario Lacus, a vast hydrocarbon lake on Titan, a moon of Saturn. During his investigation, he became intrigued by the sailing stones and set about finding an explanation for their movement. He did this by devising a simple experiment using plastic containers. He placed a small rock in the container and filled it with water until there was just a tiny amount of rock showing just above the waterline. He then placed it in the freezer to produce a small slab of ice with a rock encased in it. The frozen block was then placed in a large tray of water with sand at the bottom. He then blew the encased rock and it moved across the water. As it moved, it formed a trail in the sand at the bottom of the tray. Using this very basic principle, it was estimated that under extreme weather conditions in Death Valley, sufficient water and ice could form to float the rocks across the muddy bottom of Racetrack Playa with just a light breeze, leaving a trail in the mud as the rocks moved. However, despite this being the most plausible explanation, there are still visitors and conspiracy theorists who believe there is more to it than this. The dark side of the moon. For many years, mystery surrounded the dark side, or far side of the moon, as it was alleged that some Apollo astronauts had seen UFOs there, but were told to keep quiet. It sounds hard to believe, but we've talked about it before, and it's actually pretty interesting. Even the communication from the moon back to ground control, if correct, highly suggests something else was up there. This sparked all kinds of speculation about extraterrestrial life, alien bases, and alien encounters that were being covered up by NASA and the government. There were also photographs circulating on the net, purporting to show a large structure on the moon, possibly an alien base. It was even suggested that during the Cold War, the US would allow the Soviet Union to continue testing nuclear weapons, as long as it was done on the far side of the moon. The US had the same ideas for themselves. Project A119 was the official name for a top-secret United States Air Force operation in 1958. The plan was to detonate a nuclear bomb on the moon, which thankfully never went ahead. The mystery deepened further from an astronomer's point of view, when in 1959 the Soviet spacecraft Luna 3 transmitted the first images from the other side of the moon. Although the quality was poor, it was not what they were expecting. Astronomers had always assumed that the other side of the moon would look pretty much the same as the near side, but it seems to be all mountains and craters, with almost no mares. The mares, or maria, are the vast dark basaltic plains on the surface of the moon that are visible from Earth. The difference perplexed astronomers for many years, and even earned itself a project named the Lunar Farside Highlands Problem. It wasn't until 2014 that the reason for this was finally solved. Working on the assumption that the moon was created after a huge object hit Earth, and the resulting debris was flung into space and eventually formed the moon. This enormous impact would have left the Earth and the newly formed moon extremely hot. Don't forget, the moon was 10 to 20 times closer to Earth than it is today, and would have established this position where only one side ever directly faced Earth. This caused a problem, as while the moon was trying to cool down, the much larger Earth remained red hot, meaning the surface of the moon facing it was being kept molten. Meanwhile, the other side of the moon was slowly cooling. The chemical reactions and the different rates that the two surfaces cooled are what defined the different exteriors of the moon, and is responsible for the two sides being so different. To add to this, shortly after the moon was formed, both sides were struck by large meteoroids that punctured through the softer near side of the moon's crust, releasing the lakes of basaltic lava that form the maria, that make up the characteristic man-in-the-moon features. However, the far side of the moon was now cooler with a thicker crust, meaning almost no mares were created. Obviously, this is a simple way of explaining it, and if correct, it means the other side of the moon is not so dark and mysterious after all. But again, as from the transcripts from the Apollo 11 mission, that will always remain a conspiracy. The JFK Umbrella Man. From the moment President John F. Kennedy was shot, there have been rumours and conspiracy theories surrounding who the real shooter was, and in the aftermath of the assassination, one of the closest bystanders to the event came under intense scrutiny. He became known as the Umbrella Man. The day the president was shot was a bright sunny day, so when footage emerged in the aftermath of his assassination, showing an unknown man with an umbrella standing in proximity to the president moments before he was killed, alarm bells started to ring, especially as the footage showed the man opening his umbrella and lifting it high above his head, then spinning it around just as the presidential motorcade passed. Immediately after the assassination, the man sat down on the sidewalk before getting up and walking towards the Texas School Book Depository. There were claims that the Umbrella Man was acting as a signaller, opening his umbrella as a sign to go ahead and shoot, and spinning it around to signal the second round. Other suggestions were that the umbrella contained a dart that was shot at the president to incapacitate him before he was shot. Speculation about the Umbrella Man rumbled on for around 15 years, but after an appeal to the public by United States House Select Committee on Assassinations, a man called Louis Stephen Witt came forward in 1978. He identified himself as the Umbrella Man. Astonishingly, he also said that he still had the offending umbrella and did not realise the controversy surrounding him. Obviously, he was questioned about his actions, and his simple explanation was that he had been there that day to heckle Kennedy in protest at his father, Joseph Kennedy, being a known supporter of the Nazi-appeasing British Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, whose trademark just so happened to be a black umbrella. When testifying before the HSCA, Witt said, "I think if the Guinness Book of World Records had a category for people who were in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing the wrong thing, I would be number one in that position, without even a close runner-up." He was later ruled out from any conspiracies, and unless any new information comes out, the Umbrella Man has not been linked to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. The true identity of Lori Ruff. In 2010, Lori Erica Ruff committed suicide. She left behind 2 notes that appeared to make no sense and created a huge mystery for her family and investigators that dated back 30 years. Lori first emerged in 1988 when she requested the birth certificate of 2-year-old Becky Sue Turner, who had been killed in a house fire in Washington state. For the next few months, Lori used the dead girl's name before moving to Idaho, when she legally changed her name to Lori Erica Kennedy. She then moved to Dallas, where she married Blake Ruff, a member of a prominent East Texas family. However, from the start, Erica was cagey about her past and revealed very little when asked about it. In 2008, the couple had a daughter and moved into Leonard, Texas, where the marriage fell apart, resulting in Lori killing herself on Blake's driveway in December 2010. After her death, Blake and his family searched her belongings for clues to her mysterious past, and although they found things they were unsure of, they were unable to identify who she truly was. The mystery of her identity soon became fodder for the various internet sites focusing on mysteries and missing persons, including of course this channel. Eventually, a social security investigator called Joe Velling took on the case. He worked with a genealogist in California named Colleen Fitzpatrick, who used DNA from Ruff's daughter to build a family tree, and she was able to link Lori to a family in Pennsylvania, whose 17-year-old daughter had disappeared in 1986. It was confirmed that Lori Ruff was in fact their missing daughter, and they positively identified her from photographs as Kimberly McLean. Kimberly had left the family home 30 years earlier after a disagreement with her mother's new husband. The mystery of who Lori Ruff was finally solved, and her name was removed from the federal government database of missing and unidentified persons. So that's 5 mysteries and conspiracies that we can finally call an end to. Now of course, there will be some who dismiss these explanations, but that is the beauty of a mystery. For me, I think these are now totally debunked, and we can now focus on the many more mysteries that still remain unsolved. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.